In the school workplace, you may sometimes need to access places higher than a common 6-foot ladder will reach. For example, school staff members may need to paint trim on a multi-story building, change light bulbs in the stadium's light tower, or hang artwork or props from a high ceiling in the auditorium. In these instances, an aerial lift offers stable and safe access to work areas where the use of ladders would be impossible, inconvenient, or unsafe. School maintenance, facilities, and custodial staff members are the most likely staff members to operate an aerial lift. However, other school staff may need to learn to use a lift safely as well. When used correctly, aerial lifts provide safe, stable access to heights. Used incorrectly, aerial lifts can be dangerous. Each year, dozens of people die when using aerial lifts. As a result, it's mandatory that any school staff member using an aerial lift carefully follow all required safety procedures for the type of lift and model of lift they are using. Consider this real-life aerial lift accident. A 44-year-old man was thrown to the ground while working on an aerial lift at a high school in suburban Chicago. He was in the process of putting a tarpaulin around the building to protect it while siding was removed and the roof replaced. The worker was driving the lift while approximately 23 feet off the ground. One of the wheels dropped off a curb and into the street. The man, not wearing a safety harness as required, fell to his death. This course provides school staff members with an overview of important safety procedures to be used when operating any aerial lift. This course is not intended to replace hands-on training for the specific aerial lift that you will be using at your job. You must receive hands-on training on the safe use of the specific type and model of lift at your school from a qualified trainer. Operational training should optimally come from the manufacturer of the aerial lift or an OSHA-compliant training program. Please see your maintenance supervisor if you have any questions about the safe operation of the aerial lift at your school. The goal of this course is to provide school staff members with a basic understanding regarding the safe operation of aerial lifts and policies that help ensure safety. In this course, you will learn about the different types of aerial lifts, training requirements for aerial lifts, inspection and maintenance of aerial lifts, safe operation procedures for lifts, and aerial lift safety policies for school employees. In a school setting, you may encounter several different types of aerial lifts. Specific types of lifts are best suited to specific situations. Boom lifts give you the greatest flexibility for use in difficult-to-reach areas. That's because they can move both vertically and horizontally. This type of lift is often called a cherry picker or bucket truck. It has a long, elevating boom arm and attached bucket in which the worker stands. As the hydraulic arm of the cherry picker unfolds, the platform or bucket rises. It's a familiar sight for us to see a utility or telephone company employee in an elevated bucket truck repairing wires at the top of a pole. There are two types of boom lifts: articulating boom lifts and telescopic boom lifts. An articulating boom lift, also called a knuckle boom lift, has a metal arm with an elbow joint in the middle. It allows the work platform to be positioned over obstacles such as buildings and trees. A standard articulating boom lift reaches 40 to 55 feet high, but some models can extend as high as 110 feet. The lifting capacity of this type of boom is 400 to 500 pounds. A telescopic boom lift consists of a single, straight arm that extends to a horizontal or vertical reach well beyond the limit of a standard articulating boom. Some people refer to this type of lift as a stick or straight boom lift. If a school needs regular access to heights of 65 to 80 feet, a telescopic boom lift is the best choice. Larger versions have a reach of 330 feet or more. The lifting capacity of a telescopic boom lift is similar to an articulating boom at 400 to 500 pounds. Scissors lifts can only extend vertically. Scissors lifts can also be classified as mobile scaffolding. They have a platform attached to the top of crisscross braces. These braces get their name from the scissor action associated with raising the enclosed platform to the proper height. The platform on a scissors lift may have an extending bridge on it which allows closer access to the work area. The advantage of a scissors lift over a boom lift is its larger working platform and higher lifting capacities. The lifting height of a standard scissors lift starts at approximately 16 feet and goes up to 50 feet. The lifting capacity of a scissors lift is between 500 and 1,000 pounds, but some can take weights up to 2,500 pounds. There are a number of smaller type lifts, often used for internal maintenance tasks such as changing light bulbs, etc. They are known as hotel or personnel lifts. These types of lifts usually have limited capabilities in terms of weight and extension. They use mechanical devices such as rack and pinion or screw threads to extend the lift up. A hotel-type lift often has juxtaposed sections which move past each other in order to create the movement, usually in a vertical direction only. By their nature, aerial lifts are designed for temporary work and therefore require transportation between sites. At a minimum, an aerial lift must be moved around a single site as part of the same job. Because of this need, they are usually designed for easy movement. There are several ways aerial lifts can be moved. Unpowered lifts can usually be moved by hand or with a pickup truck. Self-propelled aerial lifts can be driven around a job site. Vehicle-mounted aerial lifts are often the heavy-duty and larger type of aerial lifts. They are often mounted on a truck or a flatback pickup van. Don't operate an aerial lift without hands-on instruction from an instructor qualified to train staff members on operating the specific type of lift you will be using. Only employees who have received training on the inspection, application, and operation of aerial lift devices, including hazard management, should operate an aerial lift. Your school should keep records of employee training on aerial lifts. Among the topics required to be taught, aerial lift users must be trained on how to perform a pre-start inspection, including both an equipment inspection and a workplace inspection. The steps for completing an equipment inspection are covered in the mandated training for the particular aerial lift you will be using. Additionally, employees who operate aerial lifts must be trained on the responsibilities associated with problems or malfunctions affecting the operation of the aerial device, factors affecting the stability of aerial lifts, the purpose of placards and decals on the aerial lift, applicable safety rules and regulations, such as the National Electric Safety Code, procedures required by your school to obtain authorization to operate an aerial lift, warnings and instructions issued by the operator, the actual operation of the aerial lift, and the proper use of fall protection equipment when using a lift. Two types of inspections are required for aerial lifts. Frequent inspections must be performed prior to use every time the aerial lift is operated. This inspection is done by the person operating the lift. Periodic inspection should occur according to your district's and the lift manufacturer's recommendations. Depending on the lift, the periodic inspection may be required as often as each month or as infrequently as each year. As part of a frequent inspection on an aerial lift, these checks must be made. Check operating controls and associated mechanisms for conditions interfering with proper operation. Check visual and audible safety devices for malfunctions. Check hydraulic or pneumatic systems for deterioration or excessive leakage. Check fiberglass and other insulating components for visible damage or contamination. and check for missing or illegible operational and instructional markings. Additional checks to make in a frequent inspection include: check electrical systems for malfunction, signs of excessive deterioration, dirt, and moisture accumulation. Perform a visual inspection of all bolts, pins, fasteners, and locking devices for looseness or deformation. Any suspected item should be examined and tested, and a determination must be made by a qualified person if they are a safety hazard. All unsafe items must be replaced or repaired before the aerial lift can be used again. For frequent inspections, records are not required if no safety issues are found. However, if a safety violation is found during a frequent inspection, it must be reported in writing. The resulting report and the record of the repair or corrective action must be kept on file for at least 5 years. Periodic inspection requirements for an aerial lift are more comprehensive. A periodic inspection should occur on 1 to 12-month intervals as determined by your school or district and the lift manufacturer's recommendations. Periodic inspection should be coordinated by the school's or district's maintenance director. Check the lift's owner's manual for inspection requirements. If you are a school employee and have any concerns or questions about the maintenance of an aerial lift, do not use the equipment and contact your school or district maintenance director immediately. Written, dated, and signed reports must be kept for each periodic inspection test. Records must be kept for at least 5 years or as required by applicable regulations. Doing your job in a safe and competent manner is your #1 priority. Safely operating the aerial lift is no exception. Failure to properly plan, prepare, and use the lift safely can result in injury to you or others around you. The drive and lift functions of an aerial lift are controlled by an operator. The person operating the lift can either be positioned on the work platform or at the control panel at the base of the unit. Some lifts are equipped with a control panel at both locations or with a remote control, giving the operator a choice of positions. Having controls at different locations on the lift acts as a safety feature. In the instance in which the operator is on the platform and becomes unable to operate the controls, the unit can still be operated from the base or a remote. Most models are fitted with an emergency switch, which allows the manual lowering of the lift, usually by the release of hydraulic or pneumatic pressure in the event of an emergency or power failure. Consult the operator's manual of your particular lift to acquaint yourself with the controls, including the emergency switch. Remember, to safely operate an aerial lift, you should receive hands-on training by a qualified trainer teaching an OSHA-compliant course. Controls on an aerial lift vary by model, but they often include buttons or a joystick. Depending on the type of functions the lift is able to perform, controls can include vertical movement, lateral movement, rotational movement, platform or basket movement, and ground movement. Certain requirements need to be met to operate an aerial lift at your school. Among these, lifts must be compliant with ANSI standard A92.2-2001. ANSI, or the American National Standards Institute, is a nonprofit organization that oversees the creation, distribution, and use of thousands of norms and guidelines in the business sector. It's the responsibility of district management to ensure that all aerial lifts used at your school are ANSI compliant. Aerial lifts must also have the following markings: identification, operational, and instructional. Identification markings indicate the make, model, and serial number of the lift, as well as other identifying information. Operational markings describe the function of each control on the lift. Instructional markings indicate hazards when operating the lift, as well as hazards for which the equipment does not provide protection. Every time the aerial lift is used at your school, it must be inspected prior to use. This means that you must perform an inspection in accordance with frequent inspection requirements. If any equipment parts are found to be damaged or operating unsafely, they must be replaced or repaired before operating the lift. Before using an aerial lift outdoors, check weather conditions. A lift should not be used when rain has made the platform hazardous and slippery, or if rain has created muddy conditions that may impact the lift's stability or maneuverability. Also, do not use an aerial lift during storms, high winds, or if lightning is present. Before an aerial lift is used, the surrounding work area must be surveyed for hazards such as untamped earth fills, ditches, drop-offs and floor obstructions, debris, overhead obstructions, possible electrical contacts, and presence of unauthorized persons. Unless these hazards are managed or eliminated, you should not use the aerial lift. Falling objects are always a hazard when aerial lifts are part of the job. To protect yourself and others from falling objects, follow these safety guidelines. All school employees working with and around an aerial lift must wear a hard hat. If there is a danger of falling objects from the lift platform, the area below must be barricaded and any persons prevented from entering. Given the temporary nature of aerial lifts in the school setting, they need to be moved from their place of storage to where they will be used each time. When an aerial lift is moved, the driver or operator must use the following safety procedures. Avoid any surface that affects the lift's stability, such as rugged ground, wet or muddy ground, or sloped surfaces. Maintain a safe distance from obstacles and overhead power lines. Maintain communications between the driver and operator if they are two different people. Limit the speed of the lift or the vehicle moving the lift to a rate that is safe for the surface conditions. An aerial lift can easily tip over while carrying a safe load if the vehicle is driven too fast or turned too quickly. This is especially important when dealing with a boom-type aerial lift with an arm. The safest practice is to always move or drive an aerial lift slowly and carefully. The majority of aerial lift deaths occur because the lift machine is improperly moved or braced and loses its stability. The stability of an aerial lift is crucial to avoid it turning over. There are certain working requirements that must be fulfilled in order for an aerial lift to be safely used on a job site. These requirements include the following. Employees must stand on the floor of the basket and cannot sit or climb on the edges, or use other devices to establish work positions. A safety harness attached to the boom, basket, or platform of the lift must be worn at all times while on the lift. There are certain working requirements that must be fulfilled in order for an aerial lift to be safely used on a job site. These requirements include the following. Employees must stand on the floor of the basket and cannot sit or climb on the edges, or use other devices to establish work positions. A safety harness attached to the boom, basket, or platform of the lift must be worn at all times while on the lift. Safety harnesses should be connected to a structural anchor point on the lift. Guardrails must be installed on an aerial lift. Never exceed the load capacity of the aerial lift. Allow for the combined weight of the worker, tools, and materials. Maintain a minimum distance of 10 feet from overhead power lines, and always treat power lines, wires, and other conductors as energized. The parking brake on the lift must be set while the boom is elevated. Wheel chocks must be installed before using an aerial lift on an incline. Use outriggers if provided. Aerial lift trucks should not be moved when the boom is elevated and workers are in the basket. Aerial lifts can be used safely at schools. There are two keys to their safe use in the school environment. Carefully following the safety and training requirements described in this course, and understanding the unique factors that make a school setting different than, for example, a typical construction site. Let's review the most important of these requirements, as well as consider some special considerations that are unique to the school setting. Anyone operating an aerial lift must receive hands-on training from a qualified trainer and be certified on the type and model of the lift to be used before they are allowed to operate the lift. No one may use an aerial lift on school grounds without the knowledge and permission of the school's administration. Never allow students to operate an aerial lift or stand in or on an aerial lift, ever. Minors may not ride or stand on an aerial lift. Never allow untrained parents, staff, or volunteers to operate or stand in or on an aerial lift. For example, an untrained sports videographer or an untrained band leader may not operate or stand on a school's aerial lift. If you aren't sure if an aerial lift is in safe condition, don't use it. Contact your school or district maintenance director immediately. An inspection must be performed before each use of the lift. The person operating the lift is responsible for conducting this inspection. If you are unsure whether a periodic inspection has been conducted on an aerial lift, check with your school or district maintenance director. Anyone who is being elevated by an aerial lift must wear properly secured fall arrest equipment. Hard hats are required at all times when either operating an aerial lift or standing on an aerial lift platform. Anyone working underneath an aerial lift is also required to wear a hard hat. If there is a danger of falling objects from the lift platform, the area around the platform must be barricaded. This course provided school staff members with an overview of aerial lift safety in the school setting. Additional resources for school staff are available from the following sources: OSHA Aerial Lift Safety Tips, LCOSH Electronic Library of Construction Occupational Safety and Health, Aerial Lift Safety and Construction, and the Center to Protect Workers' Rights, Aerial Lift Safety. From this course, you should be able to indicate the basic types of aerial lifts and their similarities and differences, understand the training required to operate an aerial lift, and that you must never operate an aerial lift without the proper training, grasp the importance of inspections and regular maintenance of the aerial lift in your school, describe the key steps and practices to safely operate an aerial lift, and know the safety policies for aerial lifts as they pertain to school employees. Review these points and repeat this course if needed.